let's go watch it in 2D. No, let's go watch it in 3D. But if we watch it in 3D, then is it worth the cost?
Space, the final frontier. These are the voyages of the starship Enterprise. Its 5-year mission: to explore strange new worlds, to seek out new life and new civilizations, to boldly go where no man has gone before.
My dad joined Starfleet because he believed in it. I joined on a dare.
You joined to see if you could live up to him. You spent all this time trying to be your father, and now you're wondering just what it means to be you.
It isn't uncommon, you know. It's easy to get lost in the vastness of space.
Hello, this is Adolf Vega from 3D or 2D.com, and today I'm reviewing Star Trek Beyond. As always on my 3D or 2D reviews, I'll talk about the 3D element first. So, with a movie being mostly based in space, and you would think that it would be really cool to see this in 3D, and unfortunately this is a post-converted 3D, and you could tell by looking at it because it's not that interesting. You could help distinguish between different characters in 3D. This character is closer to you than that character is farther from you, but honestly, who cares? It's just not that interesting. So what? There is one scene toward the end with some glass that's shattered that's kind of floating around, and that's kind of neat, but overall it's just kind of there for the sake of being there, and I wasn't really impressed, and it just didn't do anything for me. They did try. It's just kind of one of those things that you just kind of forget that it's there, and it doesn't excite you, or they don't play it up, and they don't really have anything too exciting with it. So I'm gonna have to give this a terrible 3D as my final verdict. It's just not worth it. Now, onto the movie itself. So, before I get into this, I want to mention a few things. First and foremost, this is the third movie in the Star Trek Kelvin universe. This is inspired by the 1960s television show. Of course, the Star Trek is also celebrating their 50th anniversary with this movie. And, I've actually been a big fan of Star Trek for decades. And, I've started my love for the franchise with Next Generation television show, and I always find this original series to be kind of quaint and kind of hard to get into. I have watched it, and I know the characters and know what's going on. I just prefer Next Generation. Being a reviewer, I would want I kind of want to tell the audience listening to this of any potential bias, because I don't want to be biased. I want to tell you, I might be more in the demographic that do like this movie than not, but I will criticize the movie. And I think it's important. For me, at least, I want to know if, someone's not going to be true to the movie they're reviewing if they are a fan of it. And if you're a true critic, I think you can get over any of those issues. So, let's get into this. The recent Star Trek movies have reestablished the original series in a rebooted timeline, which is called the Kelvin universe. This has happened because the time-traveling elements of the 2009 movie, and that's based on, Kelvin, the spaceship, and everything that's changed. The same characters, the same basic premise, but, the situation with the characters have changed. Kirk has daddy issues. Spock doesn't really have a home planet anymore, and so forth. And, they've took the ball and ran with it, The second movie, Into Darkness, is not really featured in this movie at all. This being the third movie, they don't really reference that at all. It's almost like it was blinked out of existence, and it's kind of strange, actually, when you look at it, that they just ignore it completely. But so this movie kind of feels new and different because it takes, I don't know how to put this. It makes it more a story about the characters than anything else. And I think that's actually a very strong way of doing this. The movie is very written in a funny and light tone. And it's more, a lot of characters have a lot more dialogue than they have had before. And this dialogue is expertly written and perfectly delivered. I just completely enjoyed the characters just talking about the situation they got themselves into. There is a series of events that force the crew of the Enterprise to be abandoned onto a alien planet, and they must find a way to destroy or overcome their situation. And a villain named Crawl, and he has a vendetta against the Federation. They also find another character named J-Law. This character is actually pretty cunning and really helps out the Enterprise crew. Her backstory is interesting and gives a good, part of the story into her. And it really does feel new. I mean, they start things off with some diplomacy and, how the situation got to this point is pretty interesting. And I think it's pretty exciting. And pretty funny. It's not really a comedy per se. It's more just funny because of the characters and how they present themselves. But I still really do enjoy how this movie works. It is kind of strange. I really do think it's strange that they completely ignore the elements of the second movie, the predecessor, Into Darkness, and they have more references to the TV show Enterprise than they do the previous movie in this franchise of 3 movies. No, don't get me wrong. I actually really like Enterprise, but having that confirmed as canon for this story is interesting, and I like it. But it's just really strange. And some of the stuff with Crawl is interesting. They actually give him backstory. They actually give him some time to develop him a little bit. But I kind of feel like some of the acting there is just kind of subpar. And some of the things are not explained as much as I would like it to be. So it's kind of one of those weird things where I really do enjoy the movie, but I see the flaws. And one of the biggest flaws of this movie is how convenient some of the action set pieces are, and how the engineer Scotty can basically do anything. It's a joke with the doctor is different job. I'm a doctor, not a carpenter, etc., etc. And this time around, Scotty, he's an engineer, and he could fix anything. And it is, pretty well known that this Scotty in the original series was very talented and could do anything, but there's some leaps here that I'm just like, really? That's just a little bit too far. I mean, I know he's a great engineer, but there's got to be a limit to where he is. Is he a god or something that he just fix anything? Because it kind of seemed that way. The movie ends in a pretty resolved way, with things being pretty satisfying. There does have a trope of some of the characters who don't want to be part of Starfleet, but then they come back in and they're happy with where it is. And, honestly, I don't really expect any of these characters to really be leaving, unless because it just seems like it's a trope they left in there for the sake of trying to have a conflict with the characters. And, as an audience member, they're not really going to leave. So what's the point of having that little sub-story, when it really doesn't matter? It honestly, I mean, I guess they may do that with other movies, but at least for right now, I just can't. I didn't buy it. I didn't buy that they really had a conflict of, are they going to stay, are they going to go, or what? And that's a big part of the story. So, overall, I did really found myself enjoying it. It's very entertaining. There's one really big action set piece that's a little bit silly toward the end, and how they use music is silly, but at the same time corny and funny, and it's one of those things you kind of smile and roll your eyes at the same time. And I had a lot of fun with this movie. And it does have a little intellectual side to it. So it does have a little bit of that Star Trek that you kind of know. And it feels like the old generation TV show. It really feels like a Star Trek movie, which it's kind of hard to describe what that feeling is. But it just has that chemistry between the characters. The main cast really do feel like they're a crew of a ship and they've been together for years. And, it has, all the different moments of the characters you would expect, And it's fun to explore this new planet and new aliens, and it really feels different and familiar at the same time. So I do really enjoy this movie. I wish some of the things were a little bit better done with the story, with how things get resolved. It seemed a little bit too easy, just because the captain orders Scotty to do something doesn't mean he could do it, There's got to be a limit to that power. And I do wish that Crawl was given a little bit more time and his acting was a little bit better. But overall, I still think it's a great movie, and I'm going to give this a final score of 8 out of 10. Thank you for listening. Bye.
Predict the future of this earthly human race is that having made a mess of Earth, they'll move to outer space. Well, there goes the neighborhood. Totally, completely, absolutely, irrevocably, highly illogical.
Alright, so that's going to wrap up this podcast.
Remember to like, comment, favorite, subscribe, love, whatever, heart it, do something.
3D or 2D.com can be found on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher Radio, and SoundCloud. And if you want to send us email, our email address is email3d or 2d at gmail.com. And thank you again for listening. Bye.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye, everyone.